What would you do if your entire life turned out to be a lie? Could you handle the truth if the person you love had a secret that could destroy everything? In this true crime case, we reveal the horrifying story of a husband who discovers a shocking truth about his wife, one that ends in a brutal, gruesome murder in San Francisco. A newlywed husband uncovered a secret so dark, so devastating that it led to one of the most gruesome crimes the city had ever seen. This isn't just a story about a hidden past or broken trust. It's about a marriage that spiraled into pure horror. Shocking even the most hardened detectives, the secret was deadly, and when it came out, it tore lives apart in the most brutal way. Treasure and Ethan had just celebrated their 6-month wedding anniversary. Their love story felt like a fairy tale, two souls destined for one another. They met in college during a group project, bonding over their shared love for music. Their chemistry was electric. Laughter came easily, and deep conversations often stretched into the early morning hours. Friends admired their connection, frequently describing them as the perfect couple. Friends often joked about their fairy tale romance, and as they stood hand in hand on their wedding day, they felt like they were the only two people in the world. Ethan is in his late 20s, standing about 6 feet tall with a lean athletic build reflecting his active lifestyle. He has short, tightly coiled hair, neatly trimmed, and a well-groomed beard that accentuates his strong jawline. His skin is a rich, warm brown, and his deep-set dark brown eyes exude both warmth and intensity. Ethan's facial features are sharp. With high cheekbones and a confident smile that lights up his face, Ethan works as a construction foreman for a local contracting company. He is known for his incredible work ethic and dedication to his job. Tom is motivated by a strong desire to provide for his family. He dreams of saving enough to buy a larger home and start a family with Treasure, who he imagines as a nurturing mother, Dot. After long days of labor, he enjoys returning home to share a meal with Treasure. Treasure is also in her late 20s, standing around 5 inches with a curvy yet slender figure. She has long, flowing natural hair that she often wears in a beautiful, full, curly style or occasionally in a protective hairstyle. Her skin is a smooth, deep brown, and her expressive hazel eyes are framed by long, thick lashes, giving her an alluring gaze. Treasure is a social worker, dedicated to helping individuals and families in need. She works with various community organizations, focusing on mental health and support services. Her role involves advocating for her clients, connecting them with resources, and providing emotional support during challenging times. Treasure is passionate about her work and finds it rewarding to make a positive impact on the lives of those she serves. In addition to her job, she is involved in local community initiatives, often organizing events to raise awareness and promote mental health resources. Their small apartment was filled with laughter and dreams. Ethan adored Treasure's playful spirit, and she often described him as her rock, steady and dependable. They shared everything, or so Ethan thought. He believed they had built a solid foundation based on honesty and trust. In the months following the wedding, they created a cozy home together, full of laughter, dreams, and aspirations for a future that seemed so bright. One night, after coming home late from work, Ethan found Treasure in the closet, hurriedly shoving something into a black box. He thought nothing of it at first, but a sense of unease settled in when she flinched at his approach. "Everything okay?" he asked, leaning against the doorway, his brow furrowing slightly. "Yeah, just tired," Treasure replied with a forced smile. She avoided his gaze, quickly brushing past him and out of the bathroom. Ethan's curiosity got the better of him. After Treasure had gone to bed, he quietly opened the medicine cabinet, careful not to make any noise. What he found left him baffled. A bottle of hormone replacement therapy, prescribed to Treasure under her maiden name. His heart began to pound, but he didn't understand what he was looking at. Why would Treasure need this medication? Was she sick? Why hadn't she told him? Confused, Ethan placed the bottle back and closed the cabinet. He stood in the darkened bathroom for several minutes, the wheels in his mind spinning. Part of him wanted to wake Treasure up and ask her right then and there, but something stopped him. He didn't know what it was, but he felt a deep sense of foreboding. For the next few days, Ethan's mind was consumed with the discovery. He tried to ignore it, rationalize it, but the questions kept gnawing at him. His normally affectionate relationship with Treasure became strained. He found himself pulling away from her, the intimacy they once shared replaced by a growing sense of distrust. Finally, after a particularly tense dinner, Tom couldn't hold it in any longer. "Treasure," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "I found something. In the bathroom." Treasure's fork clattered to her plate. Her eyes flickered with fear, but she kept her composure. "What do you mean?" she asked, cautiously. "The pills," Ethan said, staring straight into her eyes. "The hormone replacement therapy. What's going on?" Treasure froze. Her hands trembled slightly, and the color drained from her face. She had known this day would come, but she hadn't prepared herself for it. Her worst fear was unfolding right before her eyes. She had spent years carefully building this life, this identity, and now everything was about to come crashing down. "Ethan, I need to tell you something," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's heart raced as he braced himself for what she was about to say. I wasn't born a woman," Treasure said, her words shaky. "I was born a man, but I've been transitioning for years now. Before we met, I had already gone through most of my transition. I didn't know how to tell you. I was afraid of losing you." Ethan stared at her in disbelief. The room seemed to tilt, his vision narrowing as her words sank in. Born male? Transitioning? His wife, his treasure, wasn't who he thought she was? I don't understand," Ethan muttered, his voice laced with anger and confusion. "You lied to me? This entire time? You've been keeping this from me?" Tears welled up in Treasure's eyes, but she reached out, trying to touch his arm. "Ethan, I didn't want to lie to you, I swear. I'm still the same person you fell in love with. I didn't think it mattered." "Didn't matter?" Ethan exploded, standing up so quickly his chair toppled over. "Of course it matters. You've been lying to me every single day of our marriage. How could you do this to me?" Treasure tried to explain, but her words only seemed to fuel Ethan's growing fury. His mind was reeling, flooded with disbelief and disgust. He felt betrayed, humiliated. The woman he thought he had married didn't exist. It was all a lie. "You made me a fool," he spat, pacing back and forth. "I married you thinking you were someone else. You tricked me." Treasure, now crying, stood up and approached him cautiously. "Please, Ethan, just listen to me. I'm still the same person. I love you." "Love?" Ethan interrupted, his voice venomous. "This isn't love. This is deception." Without warning, Ethan snapped. All the anger, the confusion, the sense of betrayal, it all exploded in a violent outburst. He shoved Treasure hard, sending her crashing into the wall. She hit the floor with a sickening thud, dazed and gasping for breath. Ethan, blinded by rage, didn't stop. His hands found a heavy object, a decorative statue, and without thinking he brought it down on her. Once. Twice. 3 times. The sound of metal on flesh echoed through the house as blood splattered across the floor. Treasure's cries turned to gurgles, and soon there was only silence. Ethan stood over her, panting, his hands shaking as he dropped the statue. He stared down at Treasure's broken, lifeless body, her once beautiful face now a grotesque, unrecognizable mass of blood and bone. For a long moment there was only the sound of his ragged breathing and the distant hum of the refrigerator. The reality of what he had done slowly began to sink in. He had killed her. His wife, the woman he had once loved so deeply, was dead by his own hands. Ethan's mind raced as he processed the horror of his actions. He stumbled back, his heart pounding in his chest. The reality of what he had done sank in like a stone, weighing him down with unbearable guilt. He grabbed his phone, his hands shaking uncontrollably as he dialed 911. I need help," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. I've hurt someone." But as he waited for the police to arrive, a chilling sense of dread enveloped him. What would he say? How could he explain what had happened? The sirens in the distance grew louder, and panic surged through him. When the police arrived, they found him sitting on the floor, blood smeared on his hands and clothes. His eyes were hollow, staring blankly at Treasure's lifeless body. "What happened here?" one of the officers asked, approaching cautiously. I didn't mean to." Ethan's stammered, his voice shaking. "I lost control." As he was taken into custody, he felt an overwhelming sense of despair wash over him. The love story he had thought he was living had twisted into a nightmare, the consequences of his actions irreversible. In the weeks that followed, Ethan's life unraveled completely. News of the gruesome murder spread quickly, and he found himself at the center of a media storm. Friends and family were shocked, struggling to understand how a seemingly perfect couple could end in tragedy. At his trial, Ethan sat silently as the prosecution laid out the details of the crime, painting him as a monster who had betrayed and murdered his wife. He listened as witnesses testified, recounting the happy couple they had once known, now shattered by violence. Ethan's defense attorney argued that he had acted in a moment of temporary insanity, driven by overwhelming emotions and a sense of betrayal, but the weight of his actions was heavy on his conscience. On the stand, Ethan struggled to find the words to explain what had happened that night. "I loved her," he said, his voice breaking. I couldn't process everything. I was scared and angry. I never wanted this to happen." But the jury was unforgiving. The verdict was swift. Guilty of second-degree murder. Ethan was sentenced to 20 years in prison, his life forever changed by a single horrific moment of rage. As he sat in his cell, Ethan had plenty of time to reflect on the choices that had led him to this point. The image of Treasure's face, filled with fear and confusion, haunted him. He had allowed his emotions to cloud his judgment, destroying the very thing he cherished most,